Hello, my name is Charles Webster Baer, and I'm going to talk about the history of the universe. Today is February 9th, 2015, and I am in Tianjin, China. And the universe started about 15 billion years ago. And it was either created 15 billion years ago, or 15 billion years ago it was so small, it was too small for the human mind to comprehend, so it didn't exist as far as humans are concerned. But it was still there. It was just too small for us to notice. Anyway, if it was already there, it got bigger and expanded. And if it was created, then after it was created, it got bigger and expanded 15 billion years ago. And it continued to expand, and as it expanded, it cooled. And 15 billion years ago, it was a energy plasma. And as this energy plasma expanded and cooled, it formed dark matter and dark energy. And as this dark matter and dark energy expanded and cooled, it formed quantum particles like leptons, which went on to form electrons, and it formed quarks, which went on to form protons and neutrons. And it continued to expand and form hydrogen atoms. And it continued to expand and cool and form giant clouds of hydrogen. And also dimensions were created. And dimensions are concepts by which we can mathematically describe the physical universe. And as these giant hydrogen clouds continued to expand, gravity acted upon them and pulled them together. And the gravity was so great in some of these hydrogen clouds that fusion occurred. And fusion is when the pressure is so extreme from gravity that the hydrogen clouds, the hydrogen atoms, fuse together to form new elements such as helium. And that's how stars are born. And that's what creates stars. And also, space is curved, and so calculus is able to describe how space is curved. However, calculus doesn't account for space the curvature of space changing with time. So we need a new form of calculus that accounts for the change of the curvature of space over time. So now we've got stars, and gravity acted upon the stars to pull the stars together to form galaxies. And so now we've got a universe, a known universe of expanding stars and galaxies that continue to expand outward. $5 billion years ago, our sun was created and our planets were created. The sun was created like any star, and then the planets were the leftover stuff that started to orbit the sun. And then 4 billion years ago, life was created by accident, theoretically speaking, because the right elements and the right energy was in the right place, and bacteria was created. We're very lucky that that happened. And this bacteria reproduced and mutated, which means it evolved. Evolution is the mutation of the DNA that's beneficial to the species. And so this bacteria mutated and evolved into plants. And the plants, algae, took over the earth and created oxygen, which created the atmosphere. And the plants evolved into fish, which evolved into reptiles, which colonized the land, and evolved into animals, which evolved into mammals, which evolved into monkeys, which evolved into humans. And if humans can survive, then eventually we will evolve into other species, which will eventually evolve into robots, which will eventually evolve into post-robotic species, which will then split the planet in a few billion years and colonize the universe, which is our job as life for lots of reasons. One reason is the sun's going to explode in 5 billion years, and our galaxy is going to collide with another galaxy in 5 billion years. So we've got about 2 or 3 billion years to split, which is plenty of time. So that's good. So in Africa, about 6 million years ago, monkeys evolved into Homo erectus, because this particular monkey stood up and walked on 2 legs, because that allowed it to get from point A to point B faster, which is good if you're being chased by a lion or a tiger or rhinoceros. And then 3 million years ago, Homo erectus evolved into Homo sapiens, which is what we are, humans. And humans, being the clever monkeys that we are, created societies and language and culture and tradition, cultivated animals and plants, and set out on this journey towards civilization. Humans are social animals, so we created societies and stuff like that. And then, 60,000 years ago, we blew out of Africa and colonized the whole planet. Yep. It's how we do. So now we've got humans all over the earth hanging out around the bonfire, telling stories, creating myths and legends, and telling tall tales, slightly exaggerating the facts. Because that's what you do when you're sitting around the campfire with nothing else to do. You tell ghost stories. And that became our tradition and our heritage and our society and our culture. And that's what people did all over the planet. We created different languages, different societies, different cultures to deal with different environments. Some isolated, some not isolated. And then civilizations began to spring up about 7,000 years ago in China, India, Babylon, Egypt, Central America. And these civilizations created language and laws and farming and science and governments and all of these things that are good, that are civilized, civilization. And then 2,500 years ago, in 500 BC, two things happened in two different parts of the planet. In Greece, we had the development of Western civilization. In Athens, democracy, science, mathematics, astronomy. And that was the basis for the entire civilization that we have today on Earth. Latin, democracy, science, logic, philosophy, intelligent thinking, stuff like that. But something also happened in India or Nepal. Buddha was born, and he headed down south to India to groove, and he started thinking about heavy stuff, and he was like, well, you know, when I dream, I think that stuff's going on, but it's actually not. It's an illusion. So how do I know that I'm not dreaming now? How can I tell what's an illusion and what's not? Well, I can't. So what if the universe is an illusion? That's a good question, Buddha. What if the universe is an illusion? Well, Buddha said if the universe is an illusion, and it's probably not, highly unlikely that it is, but if it is, then it doesn't exist. And if it doesn't exist, what does exist? I exist. And what am I? I am a soul, an immortal being. And he was right. If the universe is an illusion, and it might be, then you are a soul, an immortal being, and you're the only one that exists. However, like winning the lottery, that's highly unlikely, and we should all just assume that the universe does exist, because it's rude to tell other people that they don't exist, that they're simply an illusion. People get offended when you tell them that, and so you shouldn't tell other people that. So Buddhism, which is a philosophy, not a religion, by the way, caught on because the people in India were intelligent, but it didn't completely catch on. But it traveled east to China, where it really caught on, because they can dig deep philosophical concepts such as this in China. And so Buddhism caught on in China, and so good for the Chinese. However, Buddhism also traveled west to Jerusalem, where it was misinterpreted, either by Jesus Christ or by his followers. And that created religion, Christianity. And so humans had a lot of fun with religion. And then the Romans took over and became Christian, and they took over Europe. And Europe then went through the Industrial Revolution and the Renaissance. And the white people, who now had technology and a very effective form of government, took over the planet because they had the technology to go all over the place and enslave everyone. So that's what they did, because that's what you did back then, back in the day. And they took over America. And then the Americans created freedom of the individual. And then the Americans perfected that idea by granting total freedom to everyone, which took a long time, but eventually we got there. And hopefully the rest of the world can get there as well, sooner rather than later. Like right now, or tomorrow. So basically, what happened in the last millennium, in the 1900s, is people became the dominant species on the planet Earth. And congratulations to the human race, because that's quite an achievement. Job well done. Now, at this point, what we probably should have done was sat down and say, good for us. Now let's make sure that we don't overpopulate the planet and kill the environment. However, for whatever reason, we didn't quite do that. And so now we find ourselves in a bit of a jam. the plan was to take over the planet as humans, which is what we did. But then after we did that, we needed a new plan, which was to not destroy the planet. And unfortunately, we didn't come up with that new plan. So that's what we need to do right now, is come up with a new plan. Because the old plan was to take over the Earth and become the dominant species. Mission accomplished. So now we need a new plan, which is don't kill the Earth, don't kill the environment, and that's the new plan. So the new plan is to create a significant and sustained decline in the human population until the human population can reach a sustainable level where the environment can heal itself and survive. That's the new plan. That's the plan for this millennium. You see, there are almost 8 billion humans on Earth right now. Now, nobody knows if that's just the right amount or too many or not enough. I'm assuming it's too many. I think it's an unsustainable amount. Therefore, I think we should reduce the amount to a level that's sustainable. Now, I don't know what a sustainable level is. I'm assuming it's around 3 billion. This is a question that future generations can figure out. I'm simply saying that a sustainable level of people on Earth is below 8 billion. And so instead of going to 9 billion and 10 billion, we should go to 7 billion and 6 billion. We're headed in the wrong direction. Let me make this very, very simple. Okay? People need to stop reproducing. Humans need to stop having kids. Alright, now in China, it's a one-woman, one-child policy. That's a good policy. That means that, females can choose between having 0 kids or 1 kid. I think that's a good policy for my species. That's called reproductive rights. Reproductive rights means that every female on Earth has the right to total and free access to all forms of birth control. So that's what the United Nations is pushing, and they need to push it a little harder. And the International Monetary Fund also needs to push that. Anyway, so that's human population on Earth. This is not a racial issue. All humans need to stop having kids. This is not an economic issue. Rich people and poor people need to stop having kids. This is not a religious issue. This is not a cultural issue. This is a human issue. All people need to stop reproducing. Okay? Because there's only one thing that separates humans from the animals, and that's it. We have the ability to stop reproducing voluntarily because we're intelligent enough to realize that we don't need to reproduce anymore. There's enough people on Earth right now. We don't need to make more. We need to take care of the ones that are on the planet right now. So that's the new plan. That's the plan for this millennium. And we're way behind schedule, so we need to get on this real quick. Okay? Now, luckily in America, we've established a lot of different institutions to put forth our foreign policy. The two main institutions would be the United Nations in New York City, run by Ban Ki-moon from South Korea, and the International Monetary Fund in Washington, D.C., run by Christine Lagarde from France. Those are the two main instruments of American foreign policy. And so they're doing an okay job. They need to be more transparent, and they need to simplify their message so everybody can get it. And they need to go online with better websites. There needs to be some real leadership now in the UN and in the IMF. Leaders in the UN and the IMF need to step it up and come up with a message that's very clear to everyone. And they need to do this online. And they need, so that's important. So where we're going here is we're going to one world government. One government for the whole planet. One currency for the whole planet. No one will live to see that because it'll take another 200 years to establish that. However, what we can do now in our lifetime is lay down the foundation for that to happen and give future generations a really good chance of achieving that. So Europe's already shown us the way on how this is going to take place. Europe, the continent of Europe, is made up of many nations, 30, 35, 40, whatever. And all these nations are coming together to form one economic community, one political community, one mega nation, the EU. And that's what's going to happen all over the planet. Asia will become one economic community. North America, South America, Central America, and the Caribbean will become one economic community. This will happen. It's simply a matter of will it happen fast enough to save the planet or not. Hopefully the answer is yes. Now Europe's already shown us how to do this. So Europe's already created the blueprint on how to do this. So it's simply a matter of us doing it. Now, this can only happen when economies are stable. For an economy to be stable, it has to pass a balanced budget amendment. In other words, it's illegal to go into debt. If the government does go into debt, it's breaking the law. And if the government breaks the law, then the government lawmakers go to jail for breaking the law. Okay, if the government goes into debt, then the people in the government have broken the law and go to jail. This is the balanced budget amendment. It's illegal to go into debt. This creates a stable economy. So a balanced budget amendment needs to be passed by all governments that want to join this new super country. They've already done it in Europe. Now we need to do it in Asia and America. Another requirement for this is low inflation. Inflation has to be under 2% of gross domestic product. That is also a requirement for a stable economy. Also, total transparency. Total transparency for every government. All financial actions by this government are made public immediately for everyone to see. Total transparency. That's called freedom of speech. It's called freedom of the press. Everybody has a right to know where their tax dollars are going and where they're going, when they're going there, how much is going there, etc. So this is total transparency. So if all the governments in North America, South America, Central America, and the Caribbean can become stable economies with the balanced budget amendment, the total transparency, and the low inflation. And all these governments have votes where over 2/3 of the majority of the people support creating this new mega country, then we can do what Europe has done. And so can Asia. And so we create these huge, giant countries with the help of the International Monetary Fund. And then that's laying down the foundation for one world government. Now, due to political instability, it'll take a lot longer for the nations of Africa to do this and for the nations of the Middle East to do this. In Asia, I mean, Europe's already done it, and Asia and America can do it right now. It'll take a lot longer for Africa and the Middle East to do this because of the politically unstable environments of those countries. So that's what the IMF is. That's the job of the IMF, and it needs to do a better job. The job of the International Monetary Fund is to do what it's doing in Europe, and to do that in America and Asia, and then to eventually, at some point, to do that in Africa and the Middle East. That's the job of the IMF, and the IMF needs to do a better job, online and offline. The job of the United Nations is to bring reproductive rights to everybody and allow every human on Earth the right to decide whether or not they want to reproduce or not. Every female on Earth right now and forever on has the right to decide whether or not she wants to have kids or not. It's her choice as an individual. And if she makes the choice that I think is the correct choice, not to have kids, she needs to be completely supported in that decision by her friends and her family and her society, but also by her government, legally and financially. Legally, she's allowed to make that choice. Financially, she's allowed to make that choice because she has total and free access to all forms of birth control. You see, having kids is outdated. And married, the only reason to get married is to have kids. So if you're not going to have kids, you don't need to get married. And if you're not going to get married and have kids, then you've got all your time and your energy to spend on your education and your career. So really, having kids makes no sense. And you can lead a much better life by not having kids. You know, having kids means you're destroying the earth. And you don't want to do that. It's immoral. So that's the job of the United Nations. And the United Nations needs to do a better job of this. The United Nations needs to make sure that every human being, and this is a female issue, granted, but every human being has the right to decide for themselves whether or not they want to have kids or not. And if a female makes what I think to be the correct decision and decides never to have any kids, then she needs to have the total support of her friends and her family and her society and her culture and her country, and be congratulated by everybody for making the right decision. And she needs to have the total support for her government, making it totally legal for her to make that decision. And also financially supported by her government. In other words, she's got total access to all forms of birth control. This is the job of the United Nations. And the United Nations needs to do a better job. Now, as you may have guessed, I've already addressed these issues in my own personal way. In the year 2000, I was living in Portland, Oregon, and I created Global Internet Government, aka GIG. And my website is www.gig15.com. And Global Internet Government basically, addresses all these issues. It's a social network and a media media outlet. So GIG, Global Internet Government, it addresses all these issues in one place. And it allows everybody to participate in and contribute to what the United Nations and the International Monetary Fund is doing and what they should be doing. It's not time to remove the stupid people from Earth, but it is time to remove the stupid people from the governments of Earth. So GIG will be able to quickly and easily identify who is GIG compliant and who is not, individually, governmentally, and nationally. If a nation is not GIG compliant, or if it is, GIG will determine that. And if a person is not GIG compliant, GIG will determine that as well. To be GIG compliant is very simple. In fact, you're probably GIG compliant right now. If you support the GIG agenda, then you're a GIGA. And the GIG agenda is very simple: freedom of speech online and reproductive rights for everybody. And for a nation to be GIG compliant, it has to have a balanced budget amendment and be totally transparent and free democracy and low inflation. So that's GIG. And that's the history of the universe so far. So that's the history of the universe. That's global internet government. That's where we are right now, and that's where we should be going shortly. So, thank you for watching this almost 40-minute speech. My name is Charles Webster Baer. I'm the owner, the founder, and the president of Global Internet Government. I'm in Tianjin, China, which is like the port of Beijing. Today is February 9th, 2015. 2005. Okay. And so that's basically all I have to say for now. My website is www.gig15.com. And have an excellent day and an excellent year and an excellent life. And peace and love. And adios.